What's a NSFW detail about a historical figure that's normally left out of the history books? Churchill was a bit of a nudist. He claimed to have some form of skin condition that made clothes uncomfortable to wear for long periods. When he visited the White House, he would sit around naked while having discussions with FDR. Sounds like LBJ. LBJ used to take his dick out and show people how big it was. He called it jumbo. There's a from him that goes something like, "Ain't that just the biggest dick you've ever seen?" He also used to talk to people while shitting too. He also made this hilarious phone call with a clothing company because his balls were too big for his pants. Benjamin Franklin liked to take air baths, which meant sitting in the window of his London house with the windows open, totally nude. I have visited that very house, which is now a museum, and stood in that very window. They are big Georgian-style windows, and I suspect that anyone in the house opposite, or possibly even glancing up from the street from the right angle direction, would have seen the full founding father. He was also a stoner, an occultist, a drunk, he ducked a lot, and was a scientist. So he was kind of America's founding badass uncle? The great magician Houdini once escaped a prison cell while fully nude as to not hide anything to escape. However, what the guards failed to check was that he hid a skeleton key in his ass checks. I mean, it's pretty well known, but not something that you'd be taught in school. JFK ducked. Obviously there was Marilyn Monroe, but apparently he also had a thing for prostitutes, that thing being his presidential penis. He has been quoted by a British Prime Minister as saying, "If I go 3 days without a lay, I get a headache." Apparently when he met the Canadian Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, Diefenbaker ripped into him for cheating on his beautiful wife. And Diefenbaker was renowned for his ability to verbally rip people a new asshole. And then shortly after, the leader of the opposition, Lester Pearson, received extensive media training from the Democratic Party. Next election, Pearson was much better in the media and won the election. During question period, Diefenbaker's grilling of Pearson would occasionally leave Pearson in tears. Diefenbaker once crashed a fishing trip with fellow Saskatchewan natives and hockey legends Gordie Howe and Johnny Bower. Howe and Bower thought the other had invited Diefenbaker, and they only realized it halfway. Leonardo da Vinci kept poems and jokes about penises. Kept? Like had a collection of, or did he write them? He wrote them, kept a few in his journals. So he's like Jonah Hill's character from Superbad, filling all his journals full of dicks. So this one day I was finishing up this big, veiny, triumphant bastard. During 1942, in a war planning visit to Washington, a British delegation including Winston Churchill stayed at the White House. The president wheeled into Churchill's bedroom one afternoon to discover the prime minister stalking the room in the nude, puffing on a cigar as he dictated to a male secretary. As Roosevelt spun about to leave, Churchill called him back, adding, "The Prime Minister of Britain has nothing to conceal from the President of the United States." Edit, wow. My first popular post.
Source for this story, Cray, E. 1990.
General of the Army, George C. Marshal, soldier and statesman. Kindle ed. Pages 253, Cooper Square Press. Raphael, the Italian painter, not the Ninja Turtle, is believed to have died from exhaustion from non-stop sex. Oh, so the bone till I croaked in his herb is literal. I'm an MC shredder, but I get the feeling. Sim Bolivar had sex in every country he went with different women, and it's explained with details in his biography. He was a really good dancer. I like how his dancing skills are in parentheses, as if that detail is what we needed to clarify him having sex in every country. Edit, okay, I get it, good dancing, good sex. I'm gonna take up dancing lessons. Gouverneur Morris wrote the language to much of the Constitution, including the preamble. He also had a wooden leg because he broke it so bad it had to be amputated. The accepted story is that his leg was caught in the reins of his horse as they got spooked, but the rumor that went around was he broke his leg jumping from a window to escape the husband of a woman he was sleeping with. In revolutionary France, a crowd surrounded his carriage because they thought he was a French aristocrat. He took his wooden leg off and pointed it at them, saying he lost his leg in the pursuit of liberty. He also died from complications after using a whalebone as a catheter. Did not see that ending coming, gotta say. The first thing the father of microbiology, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, put under a microscope was semen. They understood that semen was integral to the creation of life but didn't yet understand the concept of single-cell organisms. He fully expected to see tiny little humans in his jizz. So yeah, the first thing he did was whack off on a slide and look at it. As I recall, he didn't do the deed himself. Mrs. Van Leeuwenhoek is credited as lab assistant. Not all heroes wear capes. I read once that philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau would pull his pants down and chase after women running backwards in hopes they would spank him. It was his kink. He would lurk in alleyways with his pantaloons around his knees and jump out ass first at passing women in the hopes they'd be so frightened they'd lash out and spank him. He was a total dickhead, but the mental image is hilarious. What the straight up duck? I did not learn this, and I have a whole damn philosophy degree. They never teach you the important stuff. Edgar Allan Poe married his 13-year-old cousin and would sleep in her coffin with her after she passed away. That's so on brand for him. William the Bastard's family was torn apart when his two youngest sons dumped a chamber pot on the head of his firstborn, leading to rebellions, wars, and eventually his firstborn's lifelong imprisonment. Yeah, that's siblings for you. Firstborn, rotting in prison, this is bullshit. They started it. It's possible that 16th century samurai warlord Uesugi Kenshin was actually a woman pretending to be a man so that her clan could survive her father's death. Kenshin never married or had any concubines, had to plan battles around regular monthly abdominal pain, and is referred to in the notes of a Spanish missionary as someone's tia instead of tio, aunt not uncle. One of the members of the Lewis and Clark expedition was a slave named York. The tribes they came across were quite taken with him. He fathered many children during the trip. Apparently some believed he was a black bear god. Ben Franklin slept around and mostly stayed in France for the prostitution. He also wrote at length the benefits of sleeping with older women, including their experience, lack of interest in anything exclusive, and inability to get pregnant. This man had it all figured out. To quote, he also thought all cats looked the same in the dark. For made his own money and was president of the AUG anti-slave movement. Dude was ahead of his time. In school I was taught that Ben Franklin had a string of pearls that was several feet long. He would add a pearl to it each time he slept with a new woman. JC, what kind of school did you go to? The School of Hard Cocks. President Grover Cleveland, 49, married Frances Folsom, 21, in the White House. He was basically her godfather and even bought her a baby bed when she was an infant. She knew him as Uncle Grover as a child and told him she wanted to marry him in the White House one day. Vox.com. Groomer Cleveland. Abigail Adams apparently spent a lot of time worrying that her son John Quincy Adams would jerk off or bang whores when he left the house, and advised against doing both in several letters to him. You must only do that at home, son. Have a good day at school, son. Don't forget your lunch. And remember, if anyone offers you a whore, just say no. George Washington had severe hemorrhoids, to the extent that he couldn't even ride a horse into battle sometimes, and had to be pulled on a cart. Guess we now know why he was standing on the boat in that one painting. Paul Revere would ride from Boston to Newport Ree to cheat on his wife. No, babe, for real, the redcoats are actually coming, I swear. Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, who also popularized Gothic literature, used to meet up with her future husband, poet Percy Shelley, at the cemetery where her mother was buried. They would meet up and have angsty sex on her mother's grave. BC she was goth as hell. Moreover, Frankenstein was inspired by her fascination with reanimation, the idea of bringing something dead back to life. When she learned about this idea, she was obsessed with the idea of bringing back her baby who died days later after being born, thus sparking the idea of the monster of Frankenstein. That wasn't that unusual. Cemeteries also served as public parks until the 1900s. Her father disapproved of the two's union, because Shelley was his apprentice, so they met in secret at the cemetery and had sex. Shelley was also married at the time and also had a child. His wife found out about the affair and committed suicide. Soon after, Percy Shelley and Mary Shelley eloped and had a baby, who died, and traveled Europe together. Percy Shelley proved to be a shitty husband and wanted to have multiple sexual partners, including Mary's sister. When Frankenstein was first published, Percy Shelley initially took credit for the novel. I wish I had sources, but I learned all of this in an English literature class by a professor who wrote her thesis on Mary Shelley. Edit, sorry for the rambling. I just find her so fascinating and never have an excuse to talk about this. Yeah, the two of them traipsed across Europe and their kids kept dying, like seriously multiple children of theirs died in various Euro locations.